Okay, there we go. All right, welcome to Austin Nonprofit Meetup. And we have several new people today, some also that have registered but indicated they needed to watch later. So welcome to all of our new people, either here now or here later. I'll tell you a little bit about Austin Nonprofit Meetup. We do this every month on the third Thursday of the month, so you can set your watch by us. We always start at 12:15. And I'll explain a little bit about the format. Well, actually, the format changes, as does the topics. For instance, sometimes I'm the only presenter, sometimes there's a co-presenter, sometimes there's a panel of presenters, and sometimes we just do a networking event where we collaborate and commiserate with one another. We like to vary it, keep it interesting for you, and we stick with the 5 focus areas of your nonprofit for topics. In other words, anything related to these 5 topics: communications, programs, resource development, operations, and your people. That's your board, your staff, and your volunteers. And let me tell you just about 30 seconds of my background. I'm Nancy Manning, for those of you who don't know me. I am the founder of Power Your Mission and Austin Nonprofit Meetup. I practiced law for 25 years in Rapid City, South Dakota, while also serving on 3 nonprofit boards. And during that same time, I was founder of the only mediation and training center in Rapid City. When I moved to Austin, I began managing nonprofits as an executive director, did that for about 8 years. And then in 2014, started Power Your Mission, my consulting company. And in 2018, founded this meetup, Austin Nonprofit Meetup. Now I wanna take a second to introduce you to Shannon, who is my Zoom co-host, and she will be monitoring the chat box. Although we do ask that you try to save your questions for the question and answer period at the end. And I love it when Shannon tells us about the magic that she performs in the nonprofit world. So here's Shannon. Let me, why won't it go? You know I do this every month. There we go. Okay. Go
Got it. Thanks. Hey, everybody. I am the executive director of Launchpad Job Club here in Austin. We are a job search and networking group. And I was named that in 2020, but since 2012, I have been the program manager for Leap to Success, which was born out of the Great Recession when people were on the market for a long time. And what we do is we provide pro bono short-term professional project assistance to other nonprofits. And because of the pandemic, we went virtual like everybody else. And so we've been able to do projects around the country, not just here in Central Texas. And I know we've got a couple of people on here that we've done projects for. So I'm going to put information in the chat. One of them will be the link for Launchpad. The other one will be a link for our project request form. If you have a project that you need doing, it's not where we volunteer directly for your organization. We're not going to be long-term. It will be a project. So if you need something to be addressed, basically administratively in one form or another, we can handle that for you. So thank you, Kathy. Kathy, I'm sorry. that's my day boss. Nancy, I'll get back to you.
All right, thank you, Shannon. All right, let's do an introduction of our co-presenter today. Ms. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's morning here. I am tuning in from Long Beach, California, and I am the executive director of the nonprofit partnership out here. And we, our organization has been around for 30 years, serving nonprofits in capacity strengthening through workshops, trainings, convenings, networking, and consulting work. And we do that in partnership with foundations and other organizations And we also do advocacy for the sector and advocacy and resources, getting resources locally, especially with all of the funding and things coming down from the American Rescue Plan. And we serve about 500 nonprofits each year throughout our different program areas. And we also support our local Giving Day, because so I know Amplify Austin just happened and we were keeping an eye on that, but we have a Long Beach Gives that we support also that has so it's just for the greater Long Beach area, and it has about 200 nonprofits participating. So I am happy to be here today and share some perspectives on program development. So thank you for having me.
Very cool. And we're thrilled to have this connection with you. Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to go ahead and start on developing programs for impact. And then Michelle will speak, and then we will do a question and answer period. So here we go. Here are our learning objectives today. I'm going to talk about aligning your programs to your mission, articulating the need for your programs, how to develop, implement, and manage your programs, marketing your programs, how your programs will be evaluated, and then what successful program development and implementation looks like on the ground. All right, so let's go for it. A vision statement is the future you wish to create for the community you want to impact. Your vision, think of it as your dream, what your organization believes is the ideal condition for your community, how things would look if all the issues were completely addressed. Basically, it's what the world looks like after you guys fix it, right? That's your vision. It conveys hope for the future. A mission statement answers 3 questions about why an organization exists. I just let her in. What your organization does, who it does it for, and how it does what it does. To distinguish between the vision and mission statement, a vision statement expresses an organization's optimal goal and reason for existence, while a mission statement provides an overview of the group's plans to realize that vision by identifying the service areas, target audience, and essentially the goals of your organization. Your vision expresses your nonprofit's internal understanding that there are unmet needs, and your mission statement is an external expression of your plan to fulfill those needs. So, each program your nonprofit undertakes must be aligned with its vision and mission. Each program encompasses all the activities, people, and resources you're going to bring to bear to realize your vision and fulfill your mission. So this kind of means that you're constantly looking back to your vision and mission as well. We're going to talk about that looking back, stepping back concept in just a little bit. To ensure that your programs are successful, as efficient at meeting those unmet needs as possible, you must plan. I don't know how many of you showed up for Matt Ryerson's interview in my Facebook group. He is from United Way of Knoxville, greater Knoxville area. And he talked a lot about, most of us nonprofit leaders walk into our nonprofits with programs already developed. So he talked about what you do to follow this type of concept of program development if you're walking in midstream. And he kept saying, step back. Oops, just a second. And then Jamie, so in other words, step back and take a look. When you have these little steps that you're looking at, every once in a while you have to look at your own programs to see if they're still aligned with your mission, if they're serving your clients as well as you thought they were going to. And then Jamie Paris last Tuesday, she talked about program development in our group, and she talked about reflection, how each step requires some kind of reflection. And this is what I always found the hardest in terms of being an executive director. It was taking the time to step back, because I always felt like I had too many balls in the air. There was just too much to do. But what I found out somewhere down the road was that failure to step back meant I was actually spending more time. I was spinning my wheels. Is that the term? I think so. Anyway, so yes, it does involve planning. And I'm sorry, I didn't want to go there. There we go. All right. So strategic planning is initially where you start. And if you're in the middle of a strategic plan, again, you just have to step back and look at the plan. And remember that in strategic planning will identify goals that move the organization toward fulfillment of its mission. And then it involves strategies the organization is going to use to reach its goals. And those strategies are your roadmap for program development. So hopefully you've got a strategic plan. If not, you need to create one, or it's time to modify the strategic plan. Here are the 5 steps we're going to talk about briefly today. Step 1 is building your team. Step 2, articulating the need of those you serve. Step 3 is developing, implementing, and manage the program. Step 4 is going to be outreach and marketing, and then finally how to evaluate the program. So let's start with step 1, building your team. Program planning should include your board and leadership staff, including any program staff. Remember, one of your board's fiduciary duties involves meaningful oversight of programs. That doesn't mean micromanaging. Oversight is actually a fiduciary duty of your boards in all states of this country. But we often fail to include the community we serve in our program planning, all right? And for those of you who know Cynthia, I love this quote: if you don't ask those you serve what they need, what it will take to meet those needs, then you're only serving your own superiority. I love that quote. Ask your clients about how you are perceiving your unmet need. Are you off base or not? And how would they like those needs to be met? Gather their ideas for meeting their needs. Involve them. I mean, not all of them, but some key clients that you serve. Step 2 is to now articulate the need. Now you've built your team, you've met with everybody about the needs that your programs are going to serve. Make sure you write it down. You have to have this anyway for your grants and donor communications. So you're going to craft a statement of the problem you're solving, the need that's going to be met, and the opportunities, hopefully, that will be provided by your programs. Step 3 is now program development. This gets a little dicey, but you're going to be talking about these pieces: your inputs, your implementation, and sometimes it's called processes, your outputs, and your outcomes. And I bet you this screen is going to step ahead, but let me talk about each one of those briefly. So your inputs are the resources that you're going to need to work. Sorry, guys. Sorry. I thought I turned that off. So your inputs are the resources you're going to need to run the program. Kind of like the soup you make. What goes in the soup, right? So it'll include things like the money you'll need, the facilities, the clients, the technology, the program staff, your volunteers. Inputs should also include a complete financial analysis, your projected income and expenses, and hopefully the assumptions you're making will be included in that financial analysis, and the personnel that should or will be included. And then your program implementation is how is your program going to be delivered? That's the how of it all. So how are children going to be cared for? How are people going to be fed? How is art going to be created? How are clients going to be counseled? How will you get the vote out? How will you save habitat? That's the implementation process. You need to think about that. How is this going to work? Now there's going to be overlap between inputs and implementation when you describe how personnel are going to be used to lead and manage your program. Outputs. People tend to get outputs and outcomes mixed up. Outputs are quantitative. In other words, the numbers, how many clients are you counseling? How many children are you feeding? How many people did you get to the polls? How many paintings did you paint? Did your clients paint? Those are the outputs. Those are the numbers. Outcomes are qualitative. They're the impacts on the clients who are receiving your services, like increase in mental health, safe and secure children's development, richer artist appreciation, benefits to democracy. The outcomes are the real difference that you are making. So mental health might impact the job market. Art impacts the culture of a community and can raise awareness. And I just want to give you a couple of examples of how to get your outcomes, which is somewhat included in your evaluation, step 5. So you can do generalized research related to your cause. When I worked for the Palace Theater in Georgetown, I had to do research about the benefits to our community in terms of what the theater gave the community culturally, and what benefits the children receive by participating in theater programs. There's a bunch of websites that provide that generalized data, but then you actually have to have data of what you've done. So that's the data collection part, but it's also qualitative. In other words, your outcomes are your stories. And if you are interested in my story collection and storytelling 5-week class that I'll be offering you in the summer, send me an email. But collecting stories is an art form, and you need to learn how to do it. All right. And then when you're done with all this part, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, run that final program proposal by a few key clients involving them now. Will smooth out your outreach process later because your clients are the key to successful implementation. Step 5 is then evaluation. Oh, I messed that up, didn't I? Step 4 is outreach. Okay, this is where you're going to identify your audience, develop the messaging, and what platform you're going to do it all on. And we did a great communications workshop a couple years back, I think, and it was how to develop your communications plan. And I still have the workbook that we use. If you want a copy of that, it'll help you identify your audience, develop your messaging. All of that is in the workbook. Just email me and I'm happy to send that to you. And now step 5, evaluation. You'll need a method to determine if your programs are meeting the goals you set or achieving the stated outcomes, and if your programs are doing this efficiently. Sometimes you're going to need to be willing and able to adapt. Evaluation will let you know if you need to fine-tune your programs or even change course. This ultimately will save you time and money, but you know what? This is where my eyes glaze over because math is sometimes involved here. And plus you have to, data collection is an art form, you know, it's an art and science. So this is why I recommend you come to my Tuesday live interview next week with Michelle. We've invited Michelle back. Michelle was a speaker for an evaluation meetup last August. She's remarkable. I really recommend that you listen to what she has to say about evaluation. She has a lovely YouTube channel that's very helpful. And I know that she's been helping Michelle out at the nonprofit partnership. So, oh, I'm sorry. Don't forget that evaluation is also time to gather and find stories that can be used for public relations, fundraising, and everything else relevant to nonprofits. So I'm going to stop my screen share. I hope I left enough time. I did. Okay. Miss Michelle, I went a little long and I'm very sleepy, so I fumbled over a few things. I apologize, everyone. All right, Miss Michelle, you're on.
Thank you. And that was great. It's such a good overview. And we do work with Michelle Molina. She has been doing some workshops with us on training and evaluation. We have specific trainings we do to gear up for our giving day, and she does one of those using data, what data to collect during your giving day and how to use that outreach. So Michelle is great. So I'm glad we made that connection. So that was such a great overview. When I looked at, and I'll start sharing in just a second, when I looked at the outline for what Nancy was going to be talking about today through the different steps and things to consider in program development. I just wanted to highlight a few things and even talk a little bit about how we use that internally here at the nonprofit partnership. So let me see how this goes. You could probably see it now. And it's just not, there won't be too much on the slides, but just to kind of frame what I'm talking about. But really, I wanted to highlight some of the pieces of what Nancy talked about and start with that intentional program design. And it's something that I have a team right now from our organization who's attending a program called the Catalyst program, where they're learning about human-centered design and then going through that process. And so I wanted to highlight first that moving through that design process really allows you to fully understand what those community needs are that you're addressing and understanding what's needed to deliver on those needs. And then, you know, the other side of that I'm happy Michelle will be coming back, evaluating for effectiveness is just part of that planning life cycle too of the program and implementation. So, you know, talking about that needs assessment, understanding the needs from the perspective of those that you're intending to serve is so important in creating effective programs and not continuing potentially a cycle in the community of providing services, but not asking those people who were providing services for what their needs are and even how they would propose addressing those needs. And so what we want in the end is to, you know, like an organization who's providing fresh drinking water or wells, their goal would be to end so that everybody has water or access to water. And so we don't want to just put a band-aid on something that allows our organization to perpetually deliver that service, but we want to be able to provide something or a program that will move the needle on that need that the community has. So really understanding the need, and from that perspective, and in here I listed it as human-centered or design thinking. It may be something you're familiar with, but something to look into, just how to use community members and people who are experts in what they're living through right now in the design process, in the way that you're interviewing them and really understanding that need and really helping to come up with new solutions potentially for delivering on that need. So let's see if my next slide. Here we go. So, and just as an example, in our organization, so our clients are nonprofits. And so the way that we understand needs are, and we have a couple different feedback loops. We have affinity groups like this for executive directors, fund development professionals, volunteer managers, arts executive directors specifically, and board members. And so we have these different feedback loops where we're talking with people monthly to hear the needs, and they're sharing with each other different ways to address those needs. We also do surveys at the end of workshops, and we have an annual survey of capacity building needs for organizations. We did a couple different surveys more often than we typically had around the pandemic and how organizations were moving through that. And so just as an example of that, recently we took that survey data and we provided that to one of our funders. So this slide came from a funder presentation, but really, you know, it's talking about how we're seeing the needs and how we are then sharing that with our funders so that we can partner on programs. And that'll be the next thing I talk about. I just want to highlight in one of these learnings, it's going to be like the third bullet point I talk about, but we have an opportunity right now because there were so many shifts and changes in programming in the last 2 years to really rethink how programs are being delivered. And that was something that came up in all of the surveys that we did. And so, you know, it's that last bullet point that organizations need the space to experiment with their older established approaches. And there's an opportunity to do that now. And so something to keep in mind as you're looking at program design. Let me go back to my other slide. And so partnership and collaboration was another point I wanted just to bring up. And we are the nonprofit partnership. And you're a part of this partnership here where you're convening with each other. Like I mentioned, we have affinity groups, and there's other spaces in the community where collaboratives are meeting or engaging with each other. And looking at partnerships when you're doing program planning and development is so important, because we don't want to create something that already exists and is successful unless there's a need, and there's a need for expansion or doing something in a different way. And then it's really important to understand what those partner organizations are doing to develop something that can be effective or complement what's already happening. We know that there is limited resources, and so just having a nonprofit to compete with another nonprofit for resources when you're providing the same programming isn't always the best plan to start out with. And so understanding the needs of the community, and also understanding the landscape of who's doing what and what's working. And I know Nancy talked a little bit about program design, and part of that is also looking at evidence-based models of what's worked in that particular area, and potentially using pieces of that to design the program that you're working in. The last thing that I want to mention, although I might have extra time, is organizational life cycles. And this is also, so this is from the TCC group, and they have like a capacity building assessment they do for organizations, and also a lot of information on just organizational and program design. This is the life cycle of a nonprofit, but it's also very similar to a life cycle of a program. So if we changed even that core program development into program development and then you're developing the structure of that program, and really it's that startup, the adolescent program, a mature program, and a mature program would be functioning at a very high level. You have your peak potentially revenue or impact numbers then, and then it starts to decline or it gets stagnant. And that's the time. And what I like about this, the life cycle and the way that it loops back around, because it is a cycle, and program cycles follow the same suit. So back to that point of taking advantage of the time we're in now to use some of the things that have worked to redesign some of our programs. This really talks about when the prime time to do that is. So the time isn't like when you're stagnant or defunct as it's listed here to then say, oh, we really need to revisit this, because it may be too late at that point. But when you're at that mature stage and things are going really well, and you have a strong impact, it's really a great time to evaluate what you're doing. Do I need to bring a new program in? Is there a way to deliver this that will be more effective? Does this still work? Maybe it does, and then you continue along and that's still working at that time. But that's the time to really look at your opportunities and potentially renew what you're doing, or revise or refresh those programs. So I just wanted to share that life cycle model that is very relevant when we're talking about programs. So a program life cycle would look very similar to that. Let me make sure I hit all my points, but I know, and I think Nancy mentioned it, but if you have questions about Nancy's presentation or anything that I've talked about, you can put it in the chat, and then we're going to jump into questions in just a minute. And then the last piece that I want to just talk about is that program development is an iterative process. And so it really is, I know that's why I'm happy Michelle will be back to talk about evaluation, planning, doing a pilot, doing that program, and then evaluating, and then making some small changes to what you're doing and making it more effective, and then delivering that program again is really the best way to get to the most effective programs and services for the community. And so having that mindset going in, I think some of the design thinking talk is about that adaptive mindset to really figuring out what's the best way to deliver those programs to the community and meet the needs that the community has. So that I'm going to stop sharing now, and I might have gone a little quicker, Nancy, then, but I think then we'll have a great time for questions, and also maybe some examples. It would be great to hear, because I love being in these groups. I talked about our own affinity groups, but to hear, what's worked or your experiences with program development as well would be great to talk about.
Michelle, this is less a question and more of an observation.
Mm-hmm.
Having been the person who's been leading the Leap to Success program all these years, I've met with more than at least 100 nonprofits since that time that we've done projects for, and also ones we haven't, because I've had people directed to me because like, oh, Shannon would be a great person to talk to because you want to start this nonprofit. And I will get with them and I'll hear, yes, I just want to start an after school program for underprivileged kids. And I will very sweetly say, have you done any research? Have you checked out maybe other groups that might be doing the same thing in your area? And I want to say, and doing it longer and better. I mean, I realize people's hearts are in that, but I think in reference to today's discussion, if looking at maybe starting a new program, it's kind of what I tell these people. It's like, maybe the idea you have for your own nonprofit might actually be better served as a program of another already established organization, because they have the funding, they have the staff, they have everything in place. And when somebody opens another nonprofit here in Central Texas, where we have more per capita than anywhere else in the United States, it just, to me, it's one more splitting the baby, you know, and ergo the funding. So I guess in reference to today, you know, if you're looking at a new program, do that evaluation and see if other organizations are doing a similar program. If they're doing it better, or if you think you can do it better, great. But maybe you can partner then and, you know, work on that program together.
I love that story. I was this morning talking to my operations manager, and I was like, well, maybe I'll share what happened to you yesterday. We are co-located with a small business development center, and another one now has our information, which is great because they can send nonprofits our way. But she got 4 calls yesterday for people wanting to start nonprofits. And so she spent hours on the phone talking about exactly what you're talking about with them, because it happens all the time. And so we always suggest, if they haven't gone through the process, sometimes they're already incorporated and ready to go. But if they haven't, to do exactly what you said. And I think definitely in program development, it's also something that if your organization sees a need, that it's a great way to just partner and collaborate with another nonprofit. And that, I think, there's even specific funding or resources just for those types of collaborations that I think can be way more impactful.
Is that what you meant when you said you also look at not just the needs of the community, but also the landscape?
Mm-hmm. Right. So who's doing what and what programs are already out there in that specific area?
I also like that in the last year, starting last, I think it was January, February, we started looking with our programming in Austin Nonprofit Meetup at community-based fundraising. What is it called? Community-centric fundraising. We had one on diversity, inclusion, and equity. We had the evaluation with Michelle Molina and Saro Mohammed, I think is her last name. And we've just been looking more and more closely at getting out of our own little, really privileged type spaces and being honest with ourselves about who we're serving. And I think it's an important step our sector is taking. It's much more honest, it's much more effective, much more inclusive, much more fun. So I'm really glad you brought that up and that you guys are implementing that so successfully out there.
Yeah, and I'll just say, as far as trainings and things go, it's the difficult thing from a perspective of even with our Long Beach Gives, so like similar to Amplify Austin, the way one organization, a small grassroots organization, is going to raise money is going to be completely different than an established hospital system or something like that. And so really, you know, and sometimes we don't have the right consultant or trainer that can actually speak to that specifically, but we do try to do things like this, which is bring panels together of people doing that successfully and just sharing what they're doing with each other. And I think that's a step in the right direction in ensuring that all, you know, it's a diversity of the size of organization, who they're serving, you know, their audience, their donor audience too. So I think it, you know, all around, we are also trying to make sure that there's programming for all types of organizations.
All right, I am going to move us to the next little section here at the end. As I said in the beginning, every month at Austin Nonprofit Meetup, we have a different topic. Next month is Nonprofit Financial Health and Growth Month. And I'm very excited with my speakers I have. We're going to be covering, one speaker is going to talk about budgeting, one is going to talk about having reserves, and then the meetup is going to be on how your database should be making you money. Okay, so that's April. So please come. And here is my email, here's my website, here's the Facebook group. Please join us. Everything you need is where the action happens, is in the Facebook group. And we have about 9 more minutes. I do want to say thank you. If there's more questions, hey, we did it. You know, we used to do this in 90 minutes. I can't believe we did it Michelle, you're very succinct. Much more so than I am. I love it. I do want to thank you for being here. It's very delightful to meet you. And I'm glad I finally got to meet Brandon's wife. Miss Brandon's wife, what's your first name? I know your last name.
Unmute. Hi, I'm Tori. I am new to the nonprofit game. I was 22 years in teaching and resigned last year to come and be a part of this. So I will probably want to pick your brains if that's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Also, so it's very nice to meet you.
You can set up a free strategy session on my website. Just go to the contact us part. If there's, is there anybody else that's new that would like to introduce themselves? Because we love to get to know each other. This is what I like doing in this group, is getting to know, collaborating with each other and commiserating when necessary. So is there anybody else? Go ahead, Shannon.
Oh, just real quick, I want people to introduce themselves, but we do have a question. Michelle, is there possible that you could share your slides with Nancy? Because people would like to get the slides.
Definitely, I will. And there I have, it's in a set that has some introduction to our organization also, and contact information. So happy to share. I might be able to drop it in the chat here too, but yeah.
That's a good idea. When I send out the recording today, I'll send out the slides too. Sometimes it's too much for the server to send the slides. I don't know why. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. So then I use WeTransfer, which is free. So I could send it that way. All you have to do is accept them. I think it's like takes 2.5 seconds to set up an account. Anybody else like to introduce themselves? We do have new people here. $12:53. I can't believe we moved through that so fast. What were we doing for those 90 minutes?
Well, if nobody else is going to chime in just yet, I do have a question for Michelle regarding evaluation. I'm sure Michelle Molina will probably go over the more intricacies of it, but is there a platform that you use right now for sending out questionnaires, et cetera, and surveys?
I'll just say that it's difficult to collect information right now when everyone's virtual. So we had much more success in our workshop space collecting data, like even just a survey on, did this workshop meet your needs? So there's a couple ways. One, we do use SurveyMonkey or a Google form to collect information. So both of those Google forms are free to just ask how things are going. In a Zoom session, what we have found is probably most effective, but it's going to be a little less data than you may want, is just putting up a poll before it closes and asking people for that information right then. So that has worked better than trying to get people to answer a survey link after a training has happened. In person, it's nice to have them fill out the form. And then really what we're doing in some other spaces where we're working directly with community is interviews, phone calls and interviews and focus groups in that way. And that is has been the most effective because of the way that you know, just how we're typically still meeting virtually, and that's been working there. So, and that takes a little bit more time, but it is a good way to collect that data. And so we, you know, we have the larger surveys that we do for like across the sector. We have been putting just those out through email and social media, and then sharing in any event space that we've had.
Do you recommend for some of your nonprofits that they work with their committees, like their committee chairs, to then get that information through the committees if it's getting difficult to like have people, you know, you get like a 2% return rate on SurveyMonkey?
Right. Yes. I mean, but I'll tell you that yes, that 2% is real. It is. I think that we have the most like that, like when we're live and we ask someone to do something live, that is the best way. Yesterday, even we manage a program that's helping to build capacity of individual leaders in the community. And it's part of an early childhood education coalition. And even that, there was an activity to capture information about who's connecting with who. And we tried to do that real time, and some of it got done, and now we'll have to follow up with a survey. So it can be hard. I think incentives help if you have the ability to provide incentives, and it's something that that you can do. That always helps with community members themselves. And the other, I think I'll just speak to the other side of evaluation, and I'm sure Michelle will cover this, but when you have that data, that is a great time to share it with your funders and your donors. And so we collected survey data for the pandemic, just about programming, and also we're in the middle of strategic planning. And so we're using that information in our strategic plan, but we also set up interviews with funders to talk about, ask them some questions about our strategic plan and share the data with them. And it's turned into other funding opportunities. And so I think there's always great ways to use the things that we're collecting that we don't always think about. So that might be, that might help with seed funding. If you're actually using that data to develop a new program, then going out and just talking to people and saying, hey, we're just looking to share what we're learning. I know you're all in Texas, so things may be a little different. In California right now, there's a budget surplus, which never happens. And our elected officials want to know what they should be spending money on. So we can take data and then share it with them and say, this is why you should be putting funds into this resource right now. And so that's the other side of why just collecting data is so important.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. When I was up at the Palace Theater, we hired a lady, I guess kind of like Michelle Molina, that set up our methodology for gathering data and displaying it in certain ways to certain people. But then I was the one that would go out and in person collect the stories. Annette has a question, right? Annette, do you have a question? Okay, go for it.
Yeah, but go ahead and finish. I can wait till you're finished.
Didn't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, but it was
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry. Well, I don't mean to interrupt. I can certainly wait until you're finished.
No, go for it.
Okay. Sure. Michelle, I'm interested in learning more about the human-centered design thinking or human-centered design process and the value of that. I mean, it seems really intriguing. It's also a pretty significant cost to get. So can you tell me some of the features of it and the advantages of using that?
Sure. So I'm going to share one slide that I have pulled up. So I have, there's a Blue Shield Foundation locally is running a program, not locally, in California. This slide, can you see the program benefits slide? Okay. This just talks about how, the program is this Catalyst program that our team is in, but this is how they're, human-centered design is couched, that you're ensuring that you're working on the right problems. It's a systematic approach. So it's an approach. It doesn't necessarily have to be something that you're paying to bring in, but it's an approach to how you're gathering data to develop new ideas. So it's a collaborative approach, including more diverse voices, and it brings more fun. But I think, and I don't know the other slides. Well, let me find out from my team if there's a good link to something that really describes the process a little bit more, and I can definitely share that with you. I was trying to go through their program materials to see what might be nice to pull out. This was the what was given to me when I did my orientation. But it really is, so I could just talk about the team right now is working on one specific project, our problem. And so they're talking about how we collect information from our leaders in the community to develop these leadership capacity building programs for them. And so right now they put all their ideas and they were brainstorming, and now they're going out and they're interviewing, and that does take time and money, but they're going out and they're interviewing the leaders that are a part of the program. And then they're going to come back with all of that information and really brainstorm ideas on how to solve that. And then they'll bring that back to that group and then pilot something with that. And so, that was just like a rough description of how that works, but let me find a few resources that might be helpful. This program is from the Center for Care Innovations, but I'm not sure if they have a lot on their website. But it is something that even one of our, design thinking was something that our team was looking at, just bringing a consultant in to train us on. And so this program that came up on human-centered design is a funded program that we were able to just join into a cohort of organizations. But I think it does really help with the the equity in programming and also this kind of saviorism of like, I know the answer, I'm going to come in and
Yeah.
do this program for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Super. That's helpful to hear that maybe just learning the outline of it or the principles of it and working to follow those. Because when I look at training specifically on human-centered design, that's the part of it that's really expensive.
I'm sure there's some guides and things you can read. It is, I mean, one of the slides that was in here, this is where I think it's just about this adaptive, flexible approach where you're here. This is, let me share just one more slide on that, which is, so did it share? There we go. It's trying to just shift your mindset on how you're approaching problem solving in the community. So like understand, we're used to making a bunch of ideas, understanding the problem and testing it out. And then they're trying to shift into understanding the problem is the biggest part of the pie. Generating those ideas is a piece of it, but then we're testing it out. And so you're spending more time on really understanding the need, figuring out and testing things, and then shifting and then retesting to get the best program or the best result out of that. And so this is really like, I think that's what can be in a training or a workshop where you're learning what that looks like in action. So our team is going through it. It is a lengthy program and a lot of work for the team right now, but what they're supposed to be doing is really learning then what's that process to bring it into other departments.
Super, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this evaluation is where my eyes always still glaze over. And I'm glad there's people like Michelle Molina and Sorrow and others who are out there to help us. And, you know, anyway, I lost my train of thought because I'm napping. Okay, all right, guys, it's 1:03 is all. How did we do that? Any other questions? I know Trish got in here late, but she'll get the recording. Let's see if there's anything else I needed to add. How about you, Michelle? Can you think of anything else? And also, you know, you showed slides later after you spoke. Are all of those slides in one? Okay, so we'll get the whole thing when we.
I'll add them together. I'll add some of these other slides. And then we do a program, all of the programs and trainings we do, we partner with consultants, wonderful experts in their very specific fields. We have a great program development workshop. It's a 2-day or 3-day workshop. Our consultant that does that has great resources. I wish I could just give you the workbook, but if you email me separately, I may be able to share a few things. It is his information, but I can also share a link to his website. There may be some resources if they're live on the website, and they're definitely something you can download, but there's a great workbook that goes along with that kind of really walks you through a process of program development.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice. Yeah, you know, there's not as much on program development, for instance, as fundraising. Fundraising is everywhere, you know, but program development sort of got left behind somewhere, and I don't know why.
And it's not from the perspective of providing workshops, people will go to fund development workshops more than a program development workshop. We can throw up 10 of those and they'll be full, and program development might be like scraping by. So, and we always do program development followed closely by a program evaluation so that they're offered in partnership because both are important.
I think the nonprofit sector is becoming more sophisticated in all of these focus areas. You know, we're becoming more diverse, not like I'd like to see us, but we're at least addressing it on a more honest, real level. Are you guys familiar with the ethical rainmaker? Do you know that one? What's her name? Rachel Muir, I think is her name. She's involved in the community-centric fundraising out in California, and she has a podcast and she interviews people. It's real. If they're short, they're maybe a half an hour tops. I'd really recommend that one. That's a little bit more cutting edge. And then Michelle Molina does have a YouTube channel with lots of great stuff on there for evaluation. It's all evaluation, connecting evidence. I think it's another company, connecting evidence, I think that's it. Well, if you guys are comfy about leaving, we can always leave early. Sorry I'm so tired today. I haven't really slept in 13 days dealing with my house sale. My daughter's moved to her new apartment. So it's like 2 moves, price of 1 big batch of stress. I'm so glad you guys all came. So glad to see all you, and thank you for the lovely work that you're all doing. And of course, you know, you can always get in touch with me and ask questions. Just use my email or that contact us on my website. So are we good to go, or? Yes? All right. Michelle, thank you so very much for taking your very valuable time with us today. It was wonderful. I loved it. Thank you. And
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next time in April. Bye-bye.
Bye.